So, the translations are out for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 417, and let's just say that we're going to have a very emotional and heart-wrenching moment between Deku and one vestige inside of One For All. As spoilers, Deku may no longer have a quirk, and the ending of My Hero is closer than we may think. And we'll get more into that, but first, right after this. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to do my manga review for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 417, titled Shimura. And boy, oh boy, we can tell that this is going to be a different kind of chapter based off the title alone, where, yeah, spoilers, we're going to be focusing on Nana Shimura in this chapter, but it's a little bit more than just that. Not only are we going to get potentially a lot more character development from her, but just in the Tomura Shigaraki line as a whole. And let's just dive right into the actual review proper to really get an understanding of what's going to be going on in this chapter. And to start off, the first few pages are just seeing the aftermath of Deku literally laying a punch on Tomura Shigaraki, but what actually causes this explosion of light and air may not necessarily be the punch itself, but the transfer of power into Tomura in this moment. Because while we do not necessarily see all of the quirks of One For All being transferred into Tomura Shigaraki, the implication is that is what is happening, and that this burst of energy is very similar to what we saw during the first war when All For One, taking over Tomura's body, tried to take One For All from Deku during that moment. A big burst of energy came, sending both of the characters away, and the implication that we're getting in this chapter is that they are both frozen in time. And the implication of this chapter is that they are frozen in time, as we see that their eyes are sort of whited out as people are trying to understand what is going on, as we see that they just seem to be trapped in this finger cocoon. But what is actually surprising about this entire motion is that while we get the implication that all of the quirks were transferred over to Tomura in this moment, there's only one vestige that actually stayed behind, and you'll never guess who it is. It's Nana Shimura. Like, it's literally, the title of the chapter is Shimura, so of course she's the last one to remain, but it actually makes some type of thematic sense for why she is remaining, because among all of the vestiges that have beef with Tomura Shigaraki in this moment, it makes sense that Nana would be the one to be left behind, because she doesn't resolve her will to actually partake in trying to help Tomura in this moment, just due to the baggage that she has, not as a user of One For All, but as a mother of her son, who is also the father of Tenko. So yeah, obviously she isn't going to be transferred in this moment, but we do get a little small moment between her and Deku where Deku is like, I'm so glad that you're here, as we have Nana lamenting the fact that she was unable to transfer over to All For One Tomura just due to her lack of resolve. And I really just enjoy the character dynamics that we get between Deku and the other users of One For All. But now they are in this world, we get a little bit more understanding of what's going on in this world. It's confirmed by Nana that they're pretty much within the conscious or the subconscious of Tomura Shigaraki, which explains why within this chapter we get to see vestiges and images of Tomura's past, where we get to see other villains that Tomura interacted with, Stain, Overhaul, Redestro, but more importantly, we get a symbolic representation of the enemy of Tomura in this entire chapter and his subconscious via a literal Dark Deku. And Deku just believes that what this figment is sort of a representation of how Tomura sees Deku, where Tomura sees Deku as an individual shaded in darkness, being antagonistic towards him and questioning like what's going to happen when he understands or learns about Tomura's past, and that what is going to be the point of it, to which Deku at this moment doesn't really have an answer. We have these other vestiges and forms questioning Deku, Because we have these other vestiges and the villains of Tomura'S past trying to question Deku, and Deku just doesn't have an answer, but all he knows is that he wants to do this because he believes that this is the right choice he needs to make. So that's some information that we learn from the fact that he is now in this vestige world, but also something else that we get to learn is that Deku is literally inside the subconscious of Tomura. And I don't mean just like in a vestige form, I mean like he is literally physically there, because in this chapter he almost gets killed and isekai'd into another world by Truck-kun, but luckily enough he was able to get out of the way in time. But we see that this world is able to do actual physical damage to Deku. So with that in mind, it ties into something that we get towards the end of the chapter, and a prediction that many people may have about what's going to happen to Deku at the end of the series. But yes, as Deku has avoided Truck-kun and was able to move past the other villains of not just his past, but the past of Tomura Shigaraki, he's about to approach the house, the core of who Tomura is. And as he opens the door, we actually get an image of Nana Shimura as well as her son, as we have the voiceover of Tenko and his sister talking about how they're going to be a hero duo and how they're both going to be heroes, and how this is juxtaposed with literally Tenko's father hitting him the first time we see the abuse. And this is just devastating, not just because we're reliving Tomura's worst moments of his life, but that Nana is getting the full breadth of what her actions actually led to, and how she's finally beginning to understand the feelings and pain that she caused, not just to Kotaro, but also to her grandson, Tenko Shimura. Because we have to realize that while we as the readers know exactly what happened to Tenko in this moment, neither Deku nor Nana herself knew this, and the fact that they're saying this is just shocking to them. And at this moment, they are unable to actually interact with this version of Tomura via Tenko, who they assume is Tomura Shigaraki at his lowest and weakest point. And they are literally physically unable to approach him in this moment. And then we just have Kotaro, who is saying those harsh words he said to Tenko during Tomura's flashback to his past. And you just have Nana coming to a realization that, oh my gosh, this is happening because of me. Because I left him, because I couldn't defeat All For One, I made Kotaro this way. And that he was only keeping the picture around, not because he wanted to remember her, but because he couldn't let go of his past. And how that kind of ties into her, and how she's finally feeling the full breadth of what she has done, and just collapses in just pain and heartache, and begins to blame herself for everything that has happened, and finally realizes that, yeah, this is kind of my fault. And this leads to her and Deku finally breaking through the panel and doing something very interesting. She apologizes to Kotaro for being a weak mother as they break through the barrier, as we see that she somewhat begins to comfort her own son as Deku goes to save Tenko. But if you actually look closely at this one panel, we see that not only is she holding on to her son, but is also preventing him from hitting Tenko one more time. Where we see that this is actually a moment where she's able to crash through the core of Tomura Shigaraki, as she apologizes to Kotaro in this moment, and seemingly weirdly enough, Kotaro seems to have heard this. Because we have to remember what was said at the beginning of this chapter. Deku is physically within the conscious of Tomura in this moment. And that these individuals do have an effect on the physical body, most likely, of Deku. But vice versa, maybe Deku and Nana can also affect the memory itself. And that while this isn't the real Kotaro, it is a close enough representation of him to have his feelings about his mother, which could be a way of Nana not just to have closure for herself and realize the pain that she caused her son, but also for her son to realize that his mother still loved him, even if it's not the real him. A version of him may realize, oh, my mother actually still cared for me. So it's cool that this is potentially symbolic for the resolution of the character of Nana Shimura, as well as sort of a pseudo redemption or pseudo closure for the son of Kotaro. But then as this is all happening, we're actually entering the final parts of the chapter where we really get to see the true origins of Tenko through the eyes of Deku, where the final part of this chapter is literally Tenko beginning to decay Moon, the dog from his past. And this is going to be very interesting because remember what I said, Deku is physically here. And if this is the moment where Moon begins to decay, this is going to lead to his sister being decayed by Tenko, and then his grandparents, and then his mother. And remember, his mother tried her hardest to save Tenko in this moment, but she died being decayed. But what is Deku going to do? Most likely, he's going to reenact that scene with Tenko as the mother figure, and potentially because he's physically there, what I think could potentially happen is that Deku is going to reach out his hand, one of his arms is going to reach out, because it's literally within this world. Decay may affect it, because we do know that decay can affect the vestiges with inside of All For One and One For All, because we saw it was able to affect All For One during the first war. Potentially Deku's arm gets decayed, but in the process, he's able to comfort the Tenko inside of him and say that he's here to save him. And that could be the moment that breaks the camel's back, where Tenko realizes, oh, maybe I could have actually been saved. And this could begin to change his perspective of heroes and could eventually lead to his hate beginning to disperse. And then there could be a little bit more confirmation about how his hate may be affected or tied to his quirk. And then that could lead to decay being very much less destructive and less useful in this fight. So Deku may not have to worry about decay anymore, even though he may actually lose an R, not just in the vestige world, but in the real world. But yeah, this is a very emotional chapter. We get a fair amount of character development and growth from Nana. We finally get Nana learning about the tragedy that is her grandson, as well as her son Kotaro, and getting to see her really reflect and feel just the pain of her own actions and consequences even more than we already saw. We already knew that she didn't want to do this, but now she fully knows that this decision that she made was wrong. And even in this heartfelt moment, she still tries to correct it by apologizing to her son, whether or not she knows that he is real or not. But besides that, just the fact that we are now within inside of the vestige world and the implication that the battle is going to be taking place in this mindscape is something that we really don't see a whole lot in manga, especially when it comes to battle shonen. We don't really get the literal physical representation of a world inside of a character's mind and actually seeing the villain and the hero fighting inside of it, but not necessarily with fisticuffs, but with words. So all in all, I really like the direction that Horikoshi is taking the story and taking this battle, and I can't wait to see where this goes, unfortunately within 2 weeks, because we are going to be on break. Also, something else that I want to bring up is just the fact that in this moment, Deku is extensively quirkless. So because he's quirkless, let's talk a little bit more, potentially in another video or even in the next video, about how this is going to affect the story moving forward. Do you think that Deku is going to regain his powers, or do you think that he's going to remain quirkless? Me personally, I'll be okay with either or, because both understands and establishes the idea with Deku that he can still be a hero with a quirk or without it, because all he wants to do is save people. But yeah, that's all I really have to say on the topic. And let me ask you this. How did you feel about the chapter? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Do you think that Deku is going to remain quirkless? And also, what do you feel about Nana Shimura? And is this a good conclusion to her story arc and character development? Leave your thoughts down below. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!